Mize, look, every weekend we talk about the biggest matchups, the biggest games, most exciting games. We take the time to take usually 3 or 4 a week that we really want to talk about. And this week we have to start in the 4 o'clock slate of games Eastern time with the Las Vegas Raiders overtime victory 40-34 over the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. This was an unbelievable game, back and forth struggle. The Raiders obviously started kind of poorly with the 2 Derek Carr interceptions, but they turned around on the back of some powerful running by Josh Jacobs, who of course finished the game off in overtime. And I know you have some specific things you want to cover about this game, but we want to hear from the Raiders fans in the comment section below. Give us your MVP of this incredible overtime victory. And look, you can say Josh Jacobs, that's fine. There's a lot of other guys we're going to talk about after in this video, about some guys that we think deserve it just as much, maybe even more than Jacobs potentially. So dig deep, think a little bit about it, and give us your MVP in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this crazy back and forth victory for the Raiders?
All right, Nick. This is easily, I'd say, game of the season so far as excitement factor. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 yards of plays over, or 10 plays of 20 yards or more this game. So I'd say 10 explosive plays on each side of the ball for each team. Obviously there was the huge Jacobs run at the end of the game. There was the flea flicker. There was the bull rushes on each side of the ball to force overtime, to turn the ball over in overtime. Like, there are so many incredible plays this game. It was a true joy to watch. So if you didn't watch it, go back and rewatch the game. It was well worth the watch. But Nick, this game was dominated by one man, and I'm not afraid to say it. The best running back in the NFL right now is Josh Jacobs, and he absolutely dominated today. And he's been dominating all season for the Raiders, but today was another level. This was like prime Derrick Henry last year-esque running by Josh Jacobs. 6.9 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns, 229 rushing yards, and obviously the long game-winning 86-yard rush. This was a truly dominant game. But he wasn't even the only dominant player on the Raiders today. There were so many guys that made so many big-time plays, Nick. This game in general was just very, very crazy. I can't say it enough how much there was to talk about in this game.
Yeah, and that kind of alludes to my point, because you and I were talking about before we recorded this video. I'm just blown away by Max Crosby. If the Raiders weren't, if the Raiders had a winning record or were deeper in the playoff contention right now, Max Crosby would be right up there with guys like Micah Parsons for Defensive Player of the Year talks. He has been that good for the Raiders this season, and he continued it today. I think he got a sack and a half against the Seattle Seahawks, but he had clutch plays down the stretch. Of course, a third down sack to help force overtime late in the fourth quarter, and then that key third down after Daniel Carlson missed that field goal to get pressure on Geno Smith basically right off the rip, force an incomplete pass, punt, and then, of course, the Jacobs touchdown. So Max Crosby, to me, is one of the more physically dominant players throughout the NFL this season. He hasn't gotten really the credit he deserves, so I'm going to take some time to shout him out as well. But along with Crosby, I want to give some credit to this Raiders, front 7, front 4 here. They held Kenneth Walker to 26 yards total on 14 carries. It's less than 2 yards a carry. All in all, the Seahawks, which are known for running the football, it's what they're known for with Geno Smith, zone read game. That's what they do. 65 total rushing yards, less than 3 yards per carry. A dominant performance up front by the Raiders defensive line and their front 7. I'll give their linebackers some credit as well for the job they did. So I want to give a lot of credit to the other side of the ball. Jacobs was stupendous, but how about Max Crosby and this Raiders defense?
Yeah, Nick. And, one other thing that you're talking about, people who don't get enough credit. And I think that the beginning of this season, he didn't really deserve the credit. But Josh McDaniels called a really nice game today. Obviously, they scored 40 points. This is the most points they've scored all season. It just shows like that he had a lot of really nice play calls. And the Seattle's a very good team. They're a solid team all around the ball. They have a lot of young rookies on the defense and on the offense. So this is a tough team to beat. This is nothing to be, stick your nose up at. But like you said, Max Crosby today was incredible. That sack, that bull rush sack by him to force overtime, I'd count it as 2 sacks because he tackled the left tackle and Geno Smith right tackle and Geno Smith at the same time. It was a sight to see. In this whole game, everybody made plays. Mac Hollins got on the board. Amir Abdullah got out there early. Foster Moreau with the big touchdown. The ball was spread out very, very well by Derek Carr to the receivers. Everybody contributed Obviously, the game was on Josh Jacobs' back, but I just think for the Raiders, they did let up 34 points, but the Seahawks are a very, very good offense. I just think the plays made by key defensive players and the offense in general, it was a very complete game in that sense. Everybody did their part. Not one single side of the ball was the winner of today's game.
Yeah, and I think you alluded to the coaching and the leadership aspect when you talk about McDaniels. How about after those early Derek Carr turnovers, they fall behind on the road to a good Seahawks team? If this Raiders team was as dysfunctional as some people in the media like to say it is, I think, they would have folded and collapsed, and this game would have been a blowout, 37-10 final Seahawks win. But they didn't, right? They have mature guys. They have Jacobs. They have Carr. They have Devontae Adams. They have Max Crosby across the roster. They got some strong leaders. McDaniels, called a great game. The flea flicker touchdown was awesome. Great execution by Derek Carr as well for his part. So I think the fact that they have the veterans and leadership in place kind of steadied the ship when things weren't going the way early. They turned it around. And in my eyes, I know this game went to overtime. Obviously, it was a close game. But when you look at the stats, it's absolutely unbelievable how much the Raiders dominated this game on the stat sheet. So they outgained the Seahawks 576 to 372. So that's more than 200 yards of offense. They outgained them. That's incredible. It's a huge margin. They were better on third down. They were 8 for 14. The Seahawks were 3 for 9 on third down. Penalties hurt them a little bit with 7, and that kind of deviated. And of course, the Derek Carr had a couple turnovers as well. They dominated time possession by almost 9.5 minutes, actually exactly 9.5 minutes. So again, even though this game was close, I think the exciting thing also for Raiders fans is they went to Seattle, and not only did they get the win in a close game that they started really poorly in, they did it by totally outplaying the Seahawks. That's a good thing down the stretch because there's some winning opportunities coming up for the Raiders. Right? They got a huge game against the Chargers coming up. They have the Steelers not long after that. They got the Patriots. They got the Rams who don't look terrible. Who do look terrible. I'm sorry. So the Raiders have a lot of winnable games coming up. And the fact that they're playing good football and getting the win shows that McDaniels, Carr, and this whole crew is kind of turning the corner here as we get to the home stretch of the season.